February the 14th, 2022 was meant to be a day for celebration of love, with university students all in the mood of the Valentine, expecting gifts and messages of love. Alas, the message that came was like a bitter pill, as the Academic Staff Union of Universities announced that it would be embarking on an industrial action to press home its demands for improved funding for universities, review of salaries for lecturers, and other issues. It's been 7 months since February 14th, and students have lost sessions of academic activities. Despite a series of negotiations between the federal government and Asuu to resolve the impasse, the meetings always end in a deadlock. Consequently, the federal government went to court to challenge the strike, with counsel to government praying for an interlocutory injunction restraining Asuu from taking further steps as regards the strike, pending the determination of the substantive suit. For federal government, the suit was filed in national interest, as the strike will result in irreparable damage to Nigerian students and to the country. Ruling on the application this afternoon, the National Industrial Court granted the request. In other words, the court restrained Asuu, whether by themselves, members, agents, privates, or howsoever called, from taking further steps and doing any act in continuance of the strike action, pending the hearing and determination of the suit filed. The judge also refused to fine the federal government as demanded by Asuu. Now, on this episode of Nigeria Today, we shall be looking at the face-off between the federal government and Asuu. I am Lydia Udijochi. Welcome to the program. With me in the studio to analyze the ruling by the National Industrial Court on the Asuu strike is Hamza Ahmed Gudaji. He is a legal practitioner. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
Okay. Also with us in the studio is a regular, Ibrahim Modibo, public affairs analyst. Glad to have you.
Thank you very much, madam.
Thank you for joining us.
Good
Let me start with the legal practitioner.
Yes.
Yes, we'd like you to give us some of the contending issues that came up in court and why it was necessary for the court to order Asuu to suspend the strike.
Well, to begin with, the National Industrial Court is a superior court of record created under the 1999 Constitution, vested with jurisdiction with respect to labor matters, including issues of strike action and industrial action. Like you had said in your introduction, the Academic Staff Union of Universities have been on strike for about 7 months. There have been efforts on the part of the government and even Asuu to negotiate the issues at stake. But it appears there is an impasse. Negotiations have stalled. So the federal government approached the National Industrial Court, which is a court clothed with jurisdiction on matters such as this, and filed a substantive action with respect to the issues at stake, and also sought for an interlocutory order, restraining the union, from continuing with the strike action. And obviously the application must have been accompanied with an affidavit of facts, which I'm not privy to, and the judge, in his own wisdom, decided to grant the application. However, I feel this is a cosmetic approach. It amounts to addressing the problem from the symptoms rather than the cause itself. Okay. I think the issues should be looked into deeply, comprehensively, okay, and a solution, proffered. Okay. Litigation is usually not the best option at resolving labor matters.
Okay. Now, I'll still stay with you before I go to Modibo. What is next now after this court ruling?
Well, ordinarily a court order is a court order. It should be obeyed. However, that is not to say that the union does not have other options at its disposal. Maybe with the leave of the Court of Appeal, they could appeal against the order, okay, or they may choose to comply. But like I said, litigation is not the best approach in circumstances such as this.
Okay, let me come to Modibo. As a parent, what was your reaction to that court ruling?
Well, thank you very much for this wonderful invitation to discuss the issue of Asuu, which has been a contending issue within the context of the present situation when it comes to the issue of academics in Nigeria. Let me begin by congratulating Mr. Saliu Dembo for his substantive appointment as the DG of NTA. I think it's a product of tenacity of purpose, a man of substance, and a person with professional candor. He has been able to perform, and I think it's a product of that. Yes, and therefore, congratulations.
We're all very happy.
Thank you.
Totally happy.
Having stated this, let us properly situate and contextualize this issue of Asuu strike, as well as this court pronouncement today. To me, as a parent, and also as a scholar, it is one of my most happiest moments. You see, in the tripodal structure of governance, the judiciary, the executive, and legislature, the issue of the courts as a determinant of an issue is very, very fundamental. And I expect Asuu to comply, even if they are going to, on appeal. I think in the interest of justice and fair play. And I know, as a matter of fact, Asuu is a law-abiding organization. They are not a lawless, they are not area boys. As an association or a union of professors, doctors, and what have you, people that have achieved intellectual capacity in terms of education, they should comply with this directive pending the determination of the substantive suit. Because based on the records available to me, the lawyer of the federal government, Mr. James Igwe, brought up some facts, before the court of arbitration. And the court has been able to determine that, look, pending the determination of the substantive suit, then they should be, the Asuu should go back to classes immediately. So I'm expecting them by this evening, they should start teaching. Having stated this, let me align myself with the barrister. It might not be proper to end up this issue in court. I think the issue of conflict resolution is more paramount, and it is very handy. Looking at the fact that for a very long time, if you look at the history of Asuu, right from 1978, when the organization was formed, and coming down to 1999, under the present democratic setup, from 1999 to the present, Asuu had about 16 different strikes. On the average, every year or two, or every year, 4 or 5 months, they are on strike. And this has further deepened the depletion of the quantum and the quality of education in Nigeria. These strikes are unnecessary. Won't Asuu have an option of involving themselves in strike? Let us explore other options of meeting the government and then try to negotiate. But all these strikes upon strikes upon strikes have not been able to help us at all. So I think I welcome this development because it is very fundamental to our educational development in this country, and to also further allow even the lecturers, some of them are already tired. You see the tenacity and this kind of consistency of hardline posture by the president of Asuu, Professor Emmanuel Sadoko, with his team. I think it is not going to lead us to the El Dorado. All we need to do is to find a common ground with the government, sit and iron out some of the fundamental issues they've raised. And what are these fundamental issues? The issues of revitalization of the universities, and this revitalization, of which one tranche has not been paid, it's about 1.1 trillion naira. And in this era of Nigeria's budget deficit, the stolen oil that we've been having almost on a daily basis, why is the government having this money to give Asuu? Let Asuu temper justice with mercy. We know that, look, there has been some problems here and there associated with the payment of their salaries, the increment in their salaries, because as a member, as a former, university student, of which I think up to now, I align myself with them, there's a need for them to have, upgraded salaries. Because honestly, what they've been doing a lot. Apart from research, they do community service, and also they embark on teaching. So with these three, for a professor to be paid maybe 500,000 in a month, when some of his students that he taught, if they go to NNPC, they will be collecting 1.5 or 2 million, or if they go to National Assembly, they will be collecting about 50 million a month. I think it is doing a great disservice to this country. So the next thing to me is for the federal government to come to terms. Let them sit down and agree. This hardline posture, if you pull the rich strings and this one pulls and this one pulls, it will cut. So the best thing is to find a common ground of understanding, so that we iron the issue in the interest of the Nigerian students, in the interest of the Nigerian masses. Because most of these people in government establishments, they don't have their children in Nigerian universities. They are abroad. So it's only the children of the masses. So please, Asuu, in the name of God, temper justice with mercy and come to common grounds.
Hamza, just in case Asuu decides to disregard this injunction, what are the implications? Or what would be the implications?
Ordinarily, we all know that a disregard to an order of court is, amongst other things, contempt of that particular court. But I'm not saying Asuu is going to disregard the order, but I'm aware that they have options available to them which they may choose to explore. However, I wish to add that it is very, very important in this country that we prioritize the issue of education. We need to be very, very serious about the funding arrangement that we have for education. We do have certain arrangements in place. We have, for example, the TED fund and maybe the UBEC. However, I think we need to seriously explore other models of funding education in this country, because fundamentally the problem has to do with the lack of proper funding for education. This has been a long-standing problem, and we need a government that will clearly articulate a plan and an agenda that will provide enough funding for education. We have to prioritize education over and above virtually everything.
Right. Now let's pause here for a break and hear from some Nigerians on the streets on what their views are regarding this topic. Take a look.
Asuu have no right whatsoever to reject this law. Asuu is another organization in this country. They are supposed to, or they must obey the rule of law in this country. Asuu tends to play the rule not by the gallery, or I don't know what they mean. They are supposed to respond. They are supposed to call back immediately this strike, because this strike has been lingering for so long. Honestly, we are not happy with the way they are handling things. Asuu.
For me, it's not feasible, because the aim is just for them to go back to school and continue teaching the children. But based on what even the Asuu president was saying at the ground of National Assembly yesterday to the speaker and even to the Minister of State for Education, he told them that you can't force somebody to still go back to work when you know that what he's fighting for and what's agitating for have not been met. So for me, it's not feasible.
The lecturers should stop going on strike, because nobody is comfortable with any services, government services that we are getting. All of us, all workers, you understand, and doctors, lawyers, everybody. The situation is even a global problem. So why should lecturers be going on strike indefinitely and unnecessarily?
Funding the universities is not rocket science. We all know we are not talking of a perfect situation. But we are not reinventing the wheel. We know what needs to be done in terms of funding, in terms of research, in terms of infrastructure.
Welcome back. This is Nigeria Today, and our focus is on the face-off between federal government and Asuu. I'm still with Hamza Ahmed Gudaji, legal practitioner, and I'm still here with Ibrahim Modibo, public affairs analyst. Okay, let me come to you, Modibo. You see, This court ruling, what does it portend for education in Nigeria? Is this the end of negotiations to improve welfare of lecturers and, of course, funding of universities?
No, I think it's a kind of a stopgap measure taken so far. With this court ruling, I am sure that a lot of compromise must come into play, compromises between the government and Asuu. Because if you look at based even on the submission of people that have been interviewed on the streets, you find out that Asuu is losing weight considerably from the Nigerian masses because of this consistency in strikes and the prolongation of this strike to over 7 months. As it is today, a lot of these students have even started forgetting about the subjects they've been taught. Some of them have been engaging themselves in other extracurriculum activities that are not in synonymity with the developmental structure of this country. Assuming without necessarily contending to the fact that Asuu has a point. Agreed, they have a point. But let them be soft in handling this point. If you look at the issues of salaries, the federal government has stated that for doctors and whatever, 25% has been increased. Or there is that proposal. And for professors, about 35%. As that man has rightly stated, Asuu is not the only one that is going to the market. Every other sector of the economy is going to the market. If for any reason you embark on industrial action and you are saying that your salaries must be paid, you see, there are 3 fundamental things that the lecturers do: research, community service, and also teaching. If you have a contract to do these 3 things and you did not do one, that's teaching. It means you have not fulfilled the contract. I'm happy that the lawyer is here. There's a flaw. I'm not a lawyer, but at least as a journalist and somebody that's into scholarship and learning, I know that if you have a contract and you've not been able to fulfill the whole contract, then you are not being fair to say that you should be paid everything. I think Asuu should have a common ground where the issue of this, their salary, 7 months salary they're talking about. Let them come to middle ground. Let them collect, if possible, the government should make a proposal. Since you've not done the 3 things you are supposed to do, we'll give you 50% of your salaries and you go back. Because honestly and sincerely, if the government concedes to this proposal by next month, medical association will do, even lawyers will also go to strike. Everybody or police, they'll all go to strikes. They will say that, look, strikes is the option. And that is why any government that knows its onions, any government that finds itself as government, should not allow its hands to be truncated by any organization. And that's why this government is standing on its feet to say that, look, we're not going to pay 100%. So I think this issue is very fundamental, because if you look at the issue of UTAS, their salary structure that they say they want, the government is insisting on IPPIS. They are insisting on UTAS. Now, a committee has already been set by the government to look at the 2 payment systems to harmonize it and to give them a leeway. I think in the interest of peace and justice, they should collect it. And also on the issue of this revitalization, let it be in pieces. I mean, piecemeal. And also the issue of, if you look at the issue of infrastructure, it is a common thing. The whole of Nigeria, as it is today, there's no money in this country. We are every day borrowing. And if you are borrowing, you are planning for a sorrowing. And therefore, for us to have a good education system, definitely the need of funding for the university is most paramount. And the government should try, in its wisdom, to see how it will be able to get some money to fund education. I'm not saying that the whole budget should go to education, but no, let them try to look at other sectors of the economy and then place it side by side by education, which is very fundamental, because any society that is not educated is doomed.
Of course, very true. Now, Hamza, let me ask you, now that it seems like the lecturers are being forced back or to go back to work, do you think this would affect their morale negatively?
Well, really, the question I would ask is, what if in the final analysis, the learned judge of the National Industrial Court finds in his judgment that there is merit in the industrial action being pursued by Asuu? What will now be the implication of that finding on this order? I keep saying, it is very, very important this thing is addressed by way of negotiation. There is a window available at the National Industrial Court. There's an ADR center at the court. I think it would be advisable if the matter is referred to the ADR center of the National Industrial Court, and we should lay less emphasis on using injunctions, although we know the court has the jurisdiction, but we all know that strike is an established inalienable labor right. Therefore, I think we should encourage parties to go back to the negotiation table, be it at the National Industrial Court ADR Center or whatever.
Okay. Okay, now going forward now, Modibo, do you think this ruling, or I wanted to let me put it this way, do you think this will affect unionism in Nigeria?
It has already, because if you look at recently, there has been this union formed by some university lecturers trying to, give Asuu a neck-to-neck contest. The lecturers have formed another organization, a parallel organization. So, and also, if you look at state universities have started pulling out. Ekiti, Osun, Lagos, Rivers, Imo, Gombe. There are so many. They've pulled out. In fact, they've opened their schools. So, Asuu, as it is today, it has over 100 universities in Nigeria within its own parameters of operation. And therefore, with all these state universities pulling out, and also with the posture of even the president of Asuu, who was quoted as saying that, some of these state universities were just quack this thing. It has annoyed some of the lecturers so much that they formed a parallel government. And that is not good for Asuu. Standing firm to say that, look, it's either this or nothing. It is not a good thing. Even in United Nations or even in world wars, it ends on the table of negotiation. After fighting, you come to a table and come to terms and agree. And therefore, Asuu is not picking up arms against the federal government. They are only using industrial action as a means of getting what they want to get, which is normal. But to me, prolonging this thing so much like this is not a good thing to the academic development of this country. And therefore, if I were to advise the government, I think the university system in this country should be given autonomy. This incessant strikes is not good for this country. If they are given autonomy, let the councils of every university determine the salary structure of its staff, employment structures, and the government should do the funding. Rather than taking it on itself under the Ministry of Education, let there be governing councils that will determine one university should have different salary for another university. So that if you don't want, you go to this thing. And if you look at some of these issues, especially this IPPIS, which the government wants to, it's something between an employer and an employee. Now, the employer is trying to determine what the employee should pay him, or through the means, which is wrong. So I strongly believe that the government is trying to check some of these problems. That is why today you see some of the lecturers, they will be operating about 4 universities and collecting salaries in 4 universities.
Okay, now, what will be your closing remark on this issue as we round up?
Okay, my closing remark will be to both Asuu and federal government. They need to consider the plight of our children. This thing has been lingering for over 7 months. And of course, there is a saying which goes that you cannot advance beyond the standard of your education. Okay. Now, this strike obviously is affecting the standard of education in Nigeria. Therefore, government needs to be up to its responsibility in order to resolve this issue, not through the courts,
but through the
through collective bargaining and other means, but not through litigation.
Not through the court. Okay. We thank you for that advice. This is where we call it.
So I will have a closing shot?
Yes. It's time. It's time.
Oh, this is a very interesting topic.
Yes, it's time. So this is where we call it a day on this episode of Nigeria Today. We'd like to appreciate you, Hamza Gudaji, for your time and insight on the program. I like the way you ended it. And to you, Ibrahim Modibo, it's always a pleasure having you for our discussions on subjects like this.
Thank you.
And thank you for congratulating our DG.
Thank you.
We appreciate you, our viewer, for being a part of this discussion. Remember, Nigeria Today comes up every Monday to Friday by 7:30 p.m. And you can watch this episode and other ones at www.youtube.com/NTD24hub. I am Lydia Odidiochi. See you again tomorrow. Goodbye.